In September 2011, Union Street Media Arts came into our school to help us learn about and raise awareness of girls' involvement in gangs. The first aspect of the project was to create a performance and short film based on young people's experience and ideas. The second part, this documentary explores different aspects of girls and gangs from the perspective of professionals and young people. We think that young people, teachers and youth workers can learn from these resources and be inspired to start projects in their own areas, looking at issues in ways relevant to them. This is important because we know there is no single profile for gangs and they are different everywhere.
It was something like loads of girls do. Didn't think really any much of it.
They want to be bad and that, like the boys. I want to get close to them bad boys.
It's not really their fault if they fall in love, but it's just how they cope with it and what they do to stay with the boyfriend that's in a gang.
Most young people don't even realise they've joined a gang, gathered a gang. It's the way other people perceive them, the way the police think about them, or maybe rival gangs, and they just kind of drift into a gang. It's not like they don't wake up one day and say, right, I'm going to join a gang. It's just something that happens.
I really believe it's a choice for everyone to do something. Even though you think you might be forced, you still have to make a choice. You can either say yes or no.
I do also think there are some girls that would say that they are forced. And I would say that they would say that they're forced because they don't see an alternative.
Sometimes it can be about finding a sense of belonging and a sense of identity. And so you find many young women who don't have that within their life for a whole host of reasons, but which the gang provides that they feel a part of something, they feel that they belong. I think that what that brings with it as well is a degree of safety and protection.
What they tend to do is hang about with gang members, male gang members, quite often older gang members, start seeing them and think it's quite cool to hang about with them.
Probably holding things and like being like around them most of the time.
So quite often the police and the authorities don't really class females as being proper kind of fully fledged gang members. They see them as on the edge, the girlfriends, or they're just a minor role.
They play a number of different roles. You have some young women who are active participants in crime in the same way that young men are. You also have some young women who are what I'd call a facilitator of crime and gang-related activity, those who will hide drugs, those who will provide false alibis for partners or other members of gangs.
They can find status in that, in being part of gang members.
They're attracted, like I said, to somebody who's involved in a gang, but then later on find that what they're expected to do, that their life is no longer their own.
I think one of the reasons why the police don't really consider females to be fully fledged gang members is because they tend not to be involved in the most serious acts of violence.
You know, as much as you may see somebody in a baseball cap and a hoodie and say that that person could be linked to a gang, you could see somebody who's in a shirt and a tie and they could be also involved in gangs. I
think there's been a lot of media attention on increasing girls and increasing girls being more violent generally, or being more involved in crime, or a lot of talk in the media about girl gangs and all-girl gangs, especially in London.
I think there is a general fantasisation and glorification of gangs within the media and also within music.
And I think that impacts upon both young women's perception of themselves and what's expected of them, but also young men's perception of young women and essentially the degradation and sexualisation of young women.
Sometimes the media gives a view that a gang is a certain type, you know, a certain ethnicity, a certain type of dress, drives a certain type of car, wears certain types of tattoos. And sometimes that can give the impression that there's only a certain type of person that gets involved in gangs, or a certain type of girl that might be attracted to gangs, which is very, very dangerous.
I don't really believe the media are to blame, number one, but I believe they influence young people.
Getting killed, putting your family at risk. That's mainly it.
Sexual exploitation of young females, typically school-aged children, so girls 13, 14, 15, start hanging about with so-called gang members who may be like 17, 18, 19.
Risk of becoming involved in violence themselves, being victimised, being sexually abused, becoming involved in crime and all the consequences that go with that. So for many of them, family breakdown then follows, involvement in the criminal justice system, use of drugs and alcohol, falling out of education and essentially ruining their prospects for developing into young women who've got options in life, who can actually do something really positive.
People who are involved in gangs and get a sentence or in jail, and that woman then will find themselves, it's like they have a sentence too.
How could you really know what's going to happen to you? You know, unless you're in something you don't really know, is it? I know we'd like to think we know because we have some information, but that's not knowing. Knowing is really experiencing.
Sometimes they can't go on to start another life because not only the person that's in jail has got a hold of them, but the crew or the gang who they're a part of are outside keeping an eye on them.
If they're going out with one person in the gang, other gang members feel like they can have sex with those young females as well.
Some of these girls may be made pregnant and are left to take care of a child.
They may have what they class as a sadist girlfriend who quite often will live in a different part of the city, be a so-called kind of nice girl, someone who'd like to settle down with.
We've had in London quite recently, there was a girl who was convicted of being the person who, what they call a honey trap, set up a guy to be gotten or attacked by another group of males, and this boy ended up being killed.
Worst case outcome, I suppose, for anything would be, ultimately would be death. They could be killed, but also obviously victims of serious sexual assault or acts of violence, or it could also be acts of violence against the family or friends as reprisals.
And I would say death at the hands of somebody else, and I would also say death at the hands of themselves, because you never know what can happen. We know definitely that if you get involved in negative gangs, there is definitely the chance of going to jail. There is definitely the chance of death for the majority, because we've seen it. It's out there. You only need to turn on the radio, to look in the newspapers, to go on the internet and see how many young people have lost their lives. And I think, like I was saying before, with the sensitisation of violence, you just don't know what's happened.
I can imagine it's going to be quite difficult to do that, because first of all you're a part of a gang and you see what happens, and I think it's the things that you see that happens then frightens you to think, well, ooh, I can't leave this.
Some people have more inner strength than others. I think some people will have support networks around them.
Not sometimes like they wake up one day and decide to leave the gang. It can be a gradual process where you start to hang about less often with a group of people you're hanging about and move away from them and distance yourself.
Their involvement in gangs in itself can isolate them. It can separate them from other young women in their community and from previous peer groups, and can often lead to them being isolated from family as well. And so when you look at the things that support people to leave a gang lifestyle, those things are often missing from young women who are heavily involved in gang activity. But that's not to say it's not possible, because it's all well and good making promises to young women as you try to divert them away from that type of behaviour, that type of lifestyle and from involvement in gangs. But unless you offer a credible alternative, unless you offer support, unless you offer people as role models, then that's an incredibly difficult journey.
There was a woman that I know who apparently disrespected her partner in front of a friend and was held down on the floor by her partner and had her front teeth punched out.
She was in a gang and she talked about her experience of fear, of thinking she had to do what she was told to do, and then how she was treated within the gang. And she talked about girls being raped within gangs.
I also know girls who have been involved in drug trafficking. So they have taken drugs or brought drugs from other countries into this country and have been caught. She had children, so therefore, and she was a single parent. and I think she got about 4 years. So those children then had to go and be farmed out, whether that was to family members or to go into custody. There's other girls who again get involved in relationships, and then some get put into prostitution.
And a lot of people think if somebody gets shot, it's to do with drug dealing and conflict over drugs turf and controlling drugs territories. In all the years I've done research, when there's been a shooting incident, quite often it's over an argument over a female. A girl going out with one gang member finds out that maybe is seeing another girl.
It's very difficult sometimes to convince somebody that what they're doing is wrong, or somebody that they feel attracted to or say that they care for is a wrong person that they should be around. Especially sometimes as when you realise that you're now in this position and you want to walk away, it's not so easy to do so.
This young woman ended up getting wrapped up in quite a serious violent crime that led to the death of a young man. Upon reflection on that, she sought support and realised that her life was really going nowhere and was actually harming other people as well. And she now actually helps to run the girls group for the next generation of young women.
Some turn to refuges and are able to get help that way because they can't stay in the house or in the area where they live to get away. And in some of the most dire circumstances, there are some people who may even take their own life because they can't take the pressure.
There's rape crisis centres and women's aid. Sometimes like the gang members will say, if you tell anybody, we'll do this to your parents or to your younger brother or sister.
Somebody gets hurt, somebody gets stabbed, somebody gets shot or something like that. That's the times when people then have to think about what they're going to do. So I think when people understand some of the consequences of the results of their behaviour, they make that choice.
And I think that's a really key thing that young women, in many cases, we find, don't see what's happening as wrong until they're given an opportunity to reflect upon it, to actually look at what's happened to them.
Crisis, right crisis, mothers against violence, fathers against violence. There's the police crime line, quite a few hostels out there. There is social services, there's youth services, there's Bernardos, there's Samaritans. So there are a lot of services out there, but whether girls that are involved in gangs are aware that they're there is another thing. It's just that thing of usually you will search for something when you're in need of it. Raising awareness, and I think that type of intervention is very, very important because one, you're telling people what is out there, you're showing these young girls and also the boys as well what is taking place for young people today.
Side of girls being involved in gangs that is focusing on how you identify those young women, what support you can offer to them is actually credible and that they will access, because that's one of the key things. As we said before, a lot of young women don't report this either to parents, friends, or certainly not to professionals, and we're attempting to change our services to make them more responsive and more credible to young women.
I think we're interested in people more than taking them to the authority. First of all, we will talk with them, we will find out about them, we will support them and we will help them in any way they feel that they need our support. And then we'll move on from there.
What we're also doing is working a lot with local schools to enable them to put in place systems that allow them to, first of all, prevent young women becoming involved, but then also to know what to do if they believe young women are involved. One such service is called our Wise Up project, and be bold enough and brave enough to say we can work with these young women rather than to put them in the too hard to do box.
I think kind of highlighting it, as I say, traditionally we associate gangs with young males, and there's been a lack of focus on females' involvement with gangs. I think that in the last year or two, for the first time, acknowledging that females are involved in many different ways and that they've been neglected for too long. So I kind of really welcome the research and the project that you're working on at the moment. I think it's something that's been needed for a long time.
I think the project was about raising awareness to younger people who don't really know what roles girls play in gangs that much. I think I've learned that a lot of girls do get involved in gangs, and some people don't actually know how serious it could get, and just like how different the role is compared to boys. I didn't really have a view on it because I didn't really know. I know girls could be involved, but with like little things like, I don't know, stashing things and stuff like that. But when you go more deep into it, it's much more serious. I feel positive because if people like us don't do things like this, then like I never knew how serious it was until I did the project, and now I know how serious it is. I think other people should know as well.
I don't think they really understand the risk. I just think they think it's good because they've seen it before or they want a boyfriend that's involved. I think I've just learned what not to do and what's best for myself instead of following other people. I feel quite positive because now I know about it, I think other people should know about the consequences as well. I think we should go like national and just put it on TV and stuff so people understand as well as us. Research shows that women and girls report only a fraction of negative experiences and incidents that happen. Improving the confidence that girls and women have in the current system and encouraging openness is a major challenge. If this project and the environment created can give young people confidence on such a small scale, imagine what can be done more widely within society.